بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين وبعد. So alhamdulillah, ونشكر فضله ورحمته, we are able to continue in reading from al-Fath al-Rabbani wal-Qadir al-Rahmani of Sayyidi Muhyiddin al-Qadir al-Jilani radiyallahu anhu. And this, as we know, is a set of 62 discourses or majalis that were delivered over a period over 2 years or so, about a year and a half, even though the Shaykh was doing that for at least a couple of decades before and after these majalis. So we've reached the 42nd one, and as we've seen, the style of the Shaykh, and even it was described by one of his students or one of his scribes, that he tends to start off with an ayah of Quran or a hadith, and then without any notes, he kind of, whatever Allah inspires him to say, he begins to say. And hence the title, Al-Fath al-Rabbani wal-Fayd al-Rahmani. And some of the ulama, they say that that which you relay, tanqul, transmit from the knowledge of scholars, is technically not called knowledge in the strictest sense. So when we discussed in the other session, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ, have taqwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will give you knowledge. Or the hadith, مَنْ عَمِلَ بِمَا عَلِمَ أَوْرَثَ اللَّهُ عِلْمَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ. Whoever abides and puts into practice that which they know, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them knowledge of that which they not know. So this knowledge of that which they not know, or the knowledge that succeeds taqwa that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what they say is al-ilm. Right? It's something that Allah inspires you, either something, an understanding of a verse or a hadith or something like that. Then they say that is your knowledge, but that which you transmit from the mashayikh or you transmit from scholarship, technically that's someone else's knowledge and you're relaying it to someone else. And of course, generally speaking, we still consider that to be knowledge. It's still ilm, but not in kind of this very specific sense that some of them talk about. So, and the key to that knowledge is amal, right? The key to that particular type of inspired knowledge is amal, is putting into practice that which you know, which has been transmitted. And that's why Imam al-Ghazali, for example, in the Ahya, he says in the beginning of the path it is knowledge, and then the middle is practice, and then at the end it's also knowledge again. But this knowledge that comes at the end is different than the one at the beginning. The one at the beginning is, call it discursive knowledge, transmitted knowledge, things that you have to learn. And then you put it into practice. And then after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you that which you do not know. He'll give you understandings and insights and openings, and ultimately it will be a type of knowledge that will sustain you throughout your spiritual path or your spiritual career, throughout your life until you meet your Lord once again upon death. So that's why it's very important that in addition to listening to different lectures and things like that, we should all try as much as we can to have a program, a manhaj of knowledge seeking. There shouldn't be a day that goes by we didn't learn something new from both transmitted knowledge, and then eventually, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you something new from al-wahbi knowledge, or gifted knowledge, that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspires directly into your heart. Otherwise, if you think about it, what's the point of the day? Just to wake up and eat and sleep and do what people do to seek a livelihood, and entertain themselves maybe when they get back for the greater part of the evening, and then go to sleep and do the same thing all over again. We want our lives to be more enlightened than that, more productive, more in tune with the divine command, inshallah. So I think this is what Shaykh Abd al-Jilani noticed of the people of his time. Maybe this lackadaisical sort of attitude to many things. The sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that things have expiry dates and lifespans. So that's everything in life. So even your mood, what we call mood swings or mood changes, they have a beginning, they have a middle, and they have an end. Then you go on to another one. Lives of people like that, of creatures of the universe, right? The universe has a beginning and it's going to have a middle, and then it's going to veer off towards its end. Eventually it's going to diminish and dissolve and dissipate and disappear. So this kind of entropy that scientists have observed on a physical sense in all things in the universe, I think also in terms of our ahwal, our spiritual states, they also have this sort of entropy or kind of lifespan. And the idea is not to try to elongate the lifespan of a particular state, but to take the benefit of it and then look forward to what will come after. So it's kind of cyclical and it's renewable, and that's why we think also the Quran as al-Rahil al-Murtahil. The Quran, as we study it, as we read it, as we reflect on its verses and its signs, its ayat, you can pick it up anywhere. Need not be at the beginning, or you can pick it up in the middle, but the middle is like the beginning. So you can start anywhere in the Mus'haf and then go from one to the next, one khatma, one completion to the next, and it's al-Rahil al-Murtahil. And every time you look at it, something new may jump out at you, some meanings or some reflections that you didn't have before will give you. And so it's constantly giving you. And as we talked about in the previous session, the book of creation also is like that. So Kitabullah al-Mastur or Kitabullah al-Maqru. Kitab al-Maqru, Quran, al-Manzur, afwan. So the Manzur is the universe, the world around us. وفي الأرض آيات للموقنين وفي أنفسكم. There's signs in the earth, in the earth, and within yourselves. And so as the distractions begin to go away and the things that keep our kind of innermost being, what he calls a sir, Shaykh Abd al-Qadir, kind of begins to come more to the surface and influences the heart and the qalb and eventually the nafs, right? So even your inclinations then start to be in line with what the Sharia wants from you. And some of the great ulama have mentioned this is a maqam that they found, like Sayyid Abdul Wahhab al-Sha'rani. He mentioned that he couldn't go near something that was haram in terms of food, except I think his finger or something would start shaking, and he knew that that's not something he could approach. So we want to, that's a type of karama actually, but we want to try to follow the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his prohibitions and avoid them, so that we can have more of a comprehensive, holistic, all of our being, as it were, to be in tune with the divine command and the divine judgment and hukm. So Shaykh begins also by citing a hadith here in the beginning, in the 42nd majlis of discourse عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال: من أحب أن يكون أكرم الناس فليتق الله، ومن أحب أن يكون أقوى الناس فليتوكل على الله، ومن أحب أن يكون أغنى الناس فليكن واثقا بما في يد الله أوثق على ما في يده. ثم يقول الشيخ: من أحب الكرامة دنيا وآخرة فليتق الله عز وجل، لأنه قال عز وجل: إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. الكرامة في تقواه والمهانة في معصيته. ومن أحب القوة في دين الله عز وجل فليتوكل على الله عز وجل، لأن التوكل يصحح القلب، يقويه ويهذبه ويهديه ويريه العجائب. لا تتكل على درهمك ولا دينارك وأسبابك، فإن ذلك يعجزك ويضعفك، وتوكل على الله عز وجل فإنه يقويك ويعينك ويلطف بك ويفتح لك من حيث لا تحتسب ويقوي قلبك. لا تبالي بمجيء الدنيا وذهابها بإقبال الخلق وإدبارهم، فحينئذ تكون أقوى الناس. وإذا توكلت على مالك وجاهك وأهلك وأسبابك فقد تعرضت لمقت الله عز وجل وزوال هذه الأشياء، إنه غيور لا يحب أن يرى في قلبك غيره. ومن أحب الغنى في الدنيا والآخرة فليتق الله عز وجل دون غيره، وليقف على بابه ويستحي منه أن يأتي باب غيره، ويغمض عينيه عن النظر إلى غيره، أعني عيني القلب لا عيني القالب. So Shaykh says here in the beginning, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he who would like to be the noblest of all people, let him devote himself piously to Allah. He who would like to be the strongest of all people, let him put all his trust in Allah. And he who would like to be the richest of all people, let him be reliant on what is in the hand of Allah rather than relying on what is in his own hand. If a person wishes to enjoy prestige in this world, what he calls it karama, or I would say dignity, also another translation, and the hereafter, he must devote himself or herself piously to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because he has said in Surah Al-Hujurat, surely the noblest among you in the sight of Allah is the most devout. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. And this was preceded by the verse, Ya ayyuhan nasu inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. People, we have created you from male and female, and we have made you into shu'ub, into peoples and qaba'il and tribes. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. So it's as if it was saying, despite your differences, your outward differences, male and female, and despite your differences in ethnicities and points of origin and different languages and lineages and so forth, all of those are external things. However, inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, that the most noble amongst you are those who have taqwa. So it's not about where you came from or who your parents are, what gender you are, anything like that, but nobility and dignity are found in taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then he says, nobility resides in pious devotion to Him, while degradation lies in disobedience to Him. If someone wishes for strength in the religion of Allah, he must put all his trust in Allah, because total trust, or tawakkul, will make the heart sound, strengthen it, train it, guide it, and let it have marvelous experiences. Do not rely on your coins of silver and gold and your material means, your asbab, for this will incapacitate and weaken you. Put all your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for He will strengthen you, help you, treat you kindly, grant you opportunities from sources you could never imagine, and fortify your heart. Pay no attention to this world as it comes and goes, nor to the movement of creatures to and fro. Then you will be the strongest of all people. If you put all your trust in your wealth, your social status, your family, and your material means, however, you will be exposed to the detestation of Allah, al-maqt, or al-ghadab, or both, I think, and the loss of all these things. Because he is ghayur, he says here very jealous, but I would say not obviously in the human terms, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us for ourselves and for Him, so that we may know Him. And so when we have this shirk al-khafi, or subtle type of association with Allah, in other words, our heart turns to other things, then if our heart is containing other things, then we put ourselves at the disposal of Allah's wrath. And sometimes this may come in the form of ta'deeb, of Allah disciplining us, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us, if we are trying to be pious, and so it actually, in the end game, will be better for us. And sometimes for those who reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it does come in the form of ta'zeeb, right, which is chastisement and punishment. So he says, if a person would like to have riches in this world and the hereafter, he must devote himself piously to Allah, to the exclusion of all else. He must stand at His door and feel too ashamed before him to approach the door of any other. He must lower his eyes from looking at anyone but Him, and I mean the eyes of his heart, al-qalb, not the eyes of his outer form or his qalib. So we've seen this theme before from Sheikh, the idea of uh, complete devotion, reliance, turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala min hayth al-qalb, in terms of the heart. And he kind of mentions also in other sections that in order to do this, there's going to be a sort of trajectory for most people in order to achieve what he is talking about, and others have talked about quite specifically and in abundance, this idea of ma'rifah, knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it means that there is some period of a detachment, perhaps even physical, or retreat, let's call it strategic retreat or isolation from things. Our nature is that if we are constantly surrounded by things that are going to be distracting to us, uh, you know, and manhiyat, things that will just will put us in a state of diverted attention and lack of focus and so forth, and appealing especially to our nafs, to our appetite of soul, and to our ego, then it doesn't really leave much opportunity for us to develop spiritually. And so, this idea of strategic retreat or strategic detachment, even in a physical form, we find this also emphasized in the Sharia. So, we have the idea of atikaf, like in Ramadan. الذي يعكف على الشيء means he stays there. So, to kind of have some period of isolation or retreat in the masjid during Ramadan. There's also, as we've seen before, this idea of khalwa. So khalwa means also to take a step back, to retreat, to be by oneself. We saw that in the career of the Prophet ﷺ, he also would go to Ghar Hira, and for periods of retreat, even before an-nubuwah, before the meeting with Jibreel. And for example, Zakaria in the Quran, that he was given the news of a son, even though he was quite advanced in age, and his wife was considered to be sterile. وهو يصلي في المحراب أن الله يبشرك بيحيى وهو يصلي في المحراب. So as he was praying in the mihrab, which is the type of khalwa, and the mihrab is his prayer area, the angels gave him the glad tidings of a son who will be named Yahya. We find that Musa alayhi salam, Moses, he retreated from Egypt and went to Ahl Madian, where he spent 10 years. He also got married and was sort of in a period of isolation till he goes back to Egypt and leads his people, his qawm, out of Egypt. So this theme we see a lot. And this doesn't mean that we have to kind of give up everything in life and sell all our possessions and go retreat to a mountain in Nepal or Kathmandu or something like that. You could choose to do that, but I think it also means that we should have these periodic kind of step back, retreat on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and maybe perhaps a yearly basis, and maybe perhaps the type of one that you do once in a lifetime. So the one on the daily basis is as simple as devoting perhaps 15 minutes post-Fajr or something like that, just to contemplation and to tafakkur and tadabbur and qira'ah and dhikr and remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and maybe a similar type of time in the evening also to do that. And perhaps on a weekly basis, if you're fortunate enough to live somewhere that like a nature or a hiking trail or some place that you can kind of be away from things and detached, a place where you can turn off your phone for half an hour and not take any messages or phone calls, and just kind of, today they call it decompress, I think is the word that they use, which gives you an indication that we are already highly agitated to begin with. All of these inputs coming our way, and I mean by inputs to our senses, and so It's not just causing maybe a heightened sensory overload, but if the senses are the keys to the path to the heart, then it also, I think, puts our spiritual state in an agitated state. So it's important to be able to step away, to take a few paces back, and do these periodic kind of strategic detachments. And that's the middle of the path. And then eventually, instead of just al-khalwa fil khalwa, you'll also have al-khalwa fil jalwa. So khalwa, or a solitude amongst the multitudes. So even though you are physically, you know, in a place where there's 50,000 other people like you, or something that's quite, from the exterior, crowded and many people, but inside, you have the khalwa. Inside you have the detachment. You went through the training, that you do on a periodic basis in order to free yourself from the shackles of dependence on humanity, and looking to them for inspiration, and looking to them for solace, and looking to them for uh, material well-being, and looking to them for everything, when it should be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then at that point, your qalib will be amongst people, your form will be amongst people, and you may appear no different than anybody else. And that's kind of the idea. The idea is not that you're going to be kind of this, necessarily, it could be, but not necessarily, this very spiritually looking sort of person with, turban and a thobe and walking with a cane, and looks like something that doesn't belong in society, or in a particular society. No, it could be just anyone looks like everybody else, but inside, their qalb is what counts. So their qalb is not the point. Their form, the outer part, is not the point. So the Shaykh is talking about this karama, this dignity, via taqwa, this strength, via tawakkul ala Allah. So notice those two connections. So taqwa is nobility, and it is dignity. So it's not by what you possess, it's by what you are free from in your heart. And that's also one of the meanings of strength. So tawakkul ala Allah, being completely reliant upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all the things that your heart is free from being attached to and dependent upon, then gives you the inner strength, because you can have all of these crazy things going on outside. Things go, things come, people go. Material wealth appears, it disappears. All of that is secondary, and maybe even irrelevant compared to the strength of the heart, or sukoon al-qalb. So there is a section here that he talks about that a little bit. So he says, يا غلام إن أردت أن تكون متقيا متوكلا واثقا فعليك بالصبر فإنه أساس لكل خير. إذا صحت لك النية في الصبر فصبرت لوجه الله عز وجل كان جزاؤه لك أن يدخل قلبك حبه وقربه دنيا وأخرى، أو أن يدخل قلبك حبه وقربه دنيا وأخرى. الصبر موافقة الحق عز وجل في قضائه وقدره الذي سبق به علمه، ولا يقدر أحد من خلقه على محوه. ثبت هذا عند المؤمن الموقن فصبر على ما قدر عليه اختيارا لا اضطرارا. إن الصبر في أول قدم اضطرار، وفي ثاني قدم اختيار. كيف تدعي الإيمان ولا صبر لك؟ كيف تدعي المعرفة ولا رضا لك؟ هذا شيء لا يجيء بمجرد الدعوة، لا كلام حتى ترى الباب وتتوسد بالعتبة وتصبر على دروس أقدام القدر وأقدام الضر والنفع. Oh, young man, or young woman, this page 251, fourth paragraph. If you wish to be devout, trusting and confident, you must learn patience, for it is a basis of all that is good. If your intention to be patient is genuine, and you practice patience for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His reward to you will be that His love and His nearness will enter your heart in this world and the hereafter. Patience is conformity to the Haqq, the Lord of Truth, in compliance with His judgment and His decree of destiny, Qadar, of which He has foreknowledge, and which none of His creatures is able to erase. This is established fact in the view of the convinced believer, al-Muqin, so he bears with patience whatever He has decreed for him, of his own volition and not from sheer necessity. So he translates ittirar as sheer necessity. Ittirar means Allah you يعني نزلت النازلة وقعت الواقعة, whatever it is that the situation it's presented itself, and most of the time you just don't have any choice but to try to be patient. And perhaps this is also some of the hadith the Prophet ﷺ, he said إنما العلم بالتعلم وإنما الحلم بالتحلم. Knowledge is by learning, and learning to be clement is by burdening oneself with the attribute of clemency. And then they extrapolated from that وإنما الصبر بالتصبر, that patience also, if you don't have it as a sajiyya, you don't have it as an innate attribute or characteristic, either one that you have been given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or one that you have been fortunate enough to develop in yourself and be trained for it so that it becomes like second nature, then at the beginning at least you have to burden yourself with it. You have to push yourself. This is what's called mujahada. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. And the ones who put this mujahada, this striving and struggling, we will guide them to our ways. So So patience is the conformity of the Lord to the Lord of Truth, in compliance with His judgment and His decree of destiny, His qadar, of which He has foreknowledge and which none of His creatures is able to erase. This is established fact in the view of the convinced believer, so he bears with patience whatever He has decreed for him, of his own volition, and not from this what we described as just sheer necessity or takalluf. In the first stage, patience is a compulsory obligation, but in the second stage, it is a voluntary choice. So here is making a distinction between السائر أو السالك أو بين الكامل أو العارف والمنتهي أو الواصل. So the salik, in the beginning of the path, it's a compulsory obligation. It's bitter. There's a bitter taste to it. It's difficult. But then it becomes something in the second stage, as he says here, on the wasil, a voluntary choice, to be patient. How can you lay claim to faith, iman, when you have no patience? How can you claim your knowledge, ma'rifah, when you have no willingness to accept? This is not something that comes about through the unsubstantiated claim. So, again, this is also one of the sort of Qadiri themes from Sayyid al-Qadir al-Jilani, that al-Zahir unwan al-Batin, and if you're making a claim, then that claim has to be backed up by the internal fortitude that substantiates the claim. So it can be La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, and that means encompassing within oneself all those things, all of the meanings that are contained therein. So submission to Allah, tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not seeing any other dar and nafa', not seeing any other entity that can bring you harm or bring you benefit except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of the meanings of the deen are within the shahadatain. They're all encompassed within them. And so this sukun al-qalb, or this stillness and tranquility of the heart, will come about, inshallah, after one passes through some of these stages, in order to get to a more intimate and state, and also more stronger conviction, what he calls iqan, right? Al-mu'min, al-muqin, right? So the more certainty that you have, then the more still that your heart becomes with the contentment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is one other section I want to get to that comes in the last part of this course that we've only touched upon very briefly before, where he says, يوجده بعد الفقد، يعيده خلقا آخر، يفنيه بيد الفناء ثم يعيده بيد الفناء ليطلب اللقاء ثم يعيده ليدعو الخلق من الفقر إلى الغنى. الغنى هو الغنى بالله عز وجل والاتصال به، والفقر هو البعد عن الله عز وجل والاستغناء بغيره. الغني من ظفر قلبه بقرب ربه عز وجل، والفقير من عدم ذلك. من أراد هذا الغنى فليترك الدنيا والأخرى وما فيهما وما سواه في الجملة، يخرج الأشياء من قلبه شيئا فشيئا، لا تتقيد بهذا اليسير الموجود عندكم، إنما جعل هذا اليسير الذي عندكم زادا فتتزودون به في طريق السير إليه. جعل لكم النعمة لتضيفوها إليه وتستدلوا به عليه، وجعل لكم العلم لتعلموا به وتهتدوا بنوره. اللهم اهدي قلوبنا إليك، وآتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. So the last paragraph in the discourse, more or less, that comes on page 255. So before that, he was talking about what we talked about, these stages, and so now he's talking about the last and final stage after at-tazkiyah, wa-taqwiyah, wa-tasfiyah, and purification, all these things. He brings him into existence after non-existence. So here, this is a new type of existence. Some of them, I heard my teacher say, they call it al-wilada al-thaniya, like a second birth, to be reborn, not to evoke, images of when people talk about reborn religion, and not in that sense, but the nafs itself now has been subdued to the degree where there's a kind of a new existence, that instead of the nafs leading you around and the ego and the appetite, it is your ruh and your sir that are now influencing the qalb and the aql and the intellect, and even the nafs itself submits to that. And so it will be a new way and a new understanding, and almost like a new life that begins. So this is what he's describing. And this is often described as al-fana. And tafna an kulli ma siwa Allah azza wa jal. So to be oblivious and to almost be annihilated, because that's what fana means, from everything except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you come back after that to a new form of existence, which is a new form of what they call baqa. So you're still there, but you're there in a different way. So he brings him into existence after non-existence. He creates him anew. He annihilates him with the hand of annihilation, al-fana, then restores him with the hand of what he calls survival or baqa, so that he may seek reunion or liqa, right? Not physical union with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but a spiritual one. To be in the hadra, to this ma'iyya. Man kana ma'Allah fallahu ma'ah, right? If you're with Allah, then Allah's with you. Then he sends him back to summon people from poverty to wealth. Wealth meaning enrichment through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and being in contact, ittisal with Him. And poverty meaning remoteness from Allah and making do with others. The rich man is one whose heart wins the nearness of his Lord. This is al-Ghani. So rich here in Arabic language, al-Ghani means the one who is self-sufficient, or sufficient with something other than that which will debase him. So lo inta al-Ghani billah. So someone who is sufficient with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, well, you'll never be debased by finding your sufficiency with Allah. But if your sufficiency al-Ghani bil-mal, wal-Ghani bil-jah, wal-Ghani bil-talaba, wal-muttabi'een, and followers, and fame, and shuhra, all of those things are in their nature, in their inherent nature, they're debasing. So it's a false type of sufficiency. It's not ghina at all. It's actually aynul faqr. It is the epitome of poverty. So al-faqr ila Allah huwa al-ghina billah. So al-faqr ila Allah wa adam al-faqr ila siwahu huwa al-ghina billah. So to be needy only of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not needy of anything else, that in itself is wealth. In other words, that in itself is sufficiency. But to be ghani, where you see your wealth as your being, you define yourself by your possessions and the number of people who count you as their friend, and the number of followers you consider yourself to have, and how much power and influence. Well, all those things are debasing, because one moment they can be there, one moment they can be not. So this is like al-ghina bil-fani yani al-faqr. So to be ghani, to be sufficient with things that are no more powerful than yourself, they can't maintain their own existence, and they can be gone in an instant. This is ayn al-faqr. Amma al-ghina bil-ghani huwa al-faqru ilayh. To be sufficient with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is the one only who is baqi, right? Who is everlasting, and ghayr fani, right? He's never going to be not there. Then that is the true ghina, that is the true wealth. So then he says, such a person, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yakhtaruhu wa yasta'miluhu, right? Chooses him and puts him to work. Puts him to work how? Or her? Then He sends him back to summon people from poverty to wealth. Wealth meaning enrichment through Allah, and being in contact, ittislad, with Him. And poverty meaning remoteness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making do with others. The rich man then is one whose heart wins the nearness of his Lord, while the poor one is one who fails to achieve this. If a person wishes for this wealth, he must renounce this world and the hereafter and all that they contain, yani, and tastaghni an kulli ma siwa Allah, to be sufficient with Allah and nothing else, not even the hereafter. So renounce this world and the hereafter and all that they contain, as well as everything whatsoever that is apart from Him, from Allah. You must evict all things from his heart. He must evict all things from his heart, one thing after another. And sometimes you do this on your own, and sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps you, right? So this pandemic that we're in and the self-isolation, it's actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of helping us along this thing, I think, a little bit. So these things they're not available to us anymore, what we used to depend upon, and they're being kind of evicted one by one from our heart. And so perhaps we come out of this in a place that the Shaykh is describing here, al-ghina billah, right? The true sufficiency with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You must not be restricted to this trifling amount you have at your disposal. This trifling amount you have here has been made available as travel rations. So stock yourselves with it in the course of your journey toward Him. Yani, that of you have of the dunya, material things. He has provided you with blessings so that you may ascribe them to Him and use them as pointers to Him. He has provided you with knowledge so that you may put it into practice and be guided by His light. O Allah, guide our hearts towards You, and give us the world, in this world, good, and good in the hereafter, and guide us against the torment of the fire. So, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. We didn't get to the 43rd discourse, but next time, inshallah. So we'll stop here.